Hey guys, Mike here. And while Rob and Mimi are off cosplaying at MegaCon, I'm holding down the fort here and I'm giving you an edition of War and Pieces. This is my first War and Pieces, so I'm excited and I hope you guys enjoy it. For me, wargaming has been part of my life since the beginning of my gaming. I can remember as a 15, 16-year-old playing Wooden Ships and Iron Men, playing Battle of the Bulge, Siege of Jerusalem, really some old, great Avalon Hill games that I really enjoyed. But today, I'm not really going to go into some of those old classics. Today, I'm going to talk about the newest game that I've learned for wargaming, and that is Conflict of Heroes: Awakening of the Bear, the second edition. I really like this war game because it sort of bridges that gap to me. It really has something to offer the seasoned wargamer and the brand new guy coming into wargaming who wants to see what it's all about. And I think it walks that line just great. I also think that what I want to talk about in this video is not necessarily how to play or all the rules, but I really want to show you what makes Conflict of Heroes different, what makes it stand out in the wargaming genre, and why I think it's great, and the things that I think it does better, and maybe some of the things it doesn't do quite as good as some of the other war games that are out there. So I am going to go down, we're going to talk about some of the pieces, talk about a couple of the things so that when I come back and give my final thoughts, we kind of know what I was talking about, and we'll see what we think. All right, see you down at the table. So here are the maps for Conflict of Heroes, and I think these are great. As you can see, you get 5 double-sided maps, and both sides of these maps are great, have great detail on them. You can see they've got buildings, they've got terrain. If you see here, there, you can even look and you zoom in on it there. You can see they've got nice roads, and I think it's really highly detailed. They look great. You can see there in the middle there's a little dot where you talk about for line of sight tracing, which I think really helps out on the map. But these maps are really thick cardboard, which is something you don't necessarily always find in war games. So here's a great look at the tokens and the chits that you get in Conflict of Heroes. You've got tanks and transports, machine gunners, heavy machine gunners, mortars, and all kinds of different units in the game. And one of the things I like about these units really is just how big they are. And really, the detail on these units is in my opinion, is really great. I mean, if you look at these units there, you get a great picture. You get all the details that you need on how to use that unit, its movement, how much points it costs. And it's not just the infantry. If you look at the tanks and the vehicles, again, they show you all of the stuff that you need to know right there on the token, which to me is great so that you're not constantly having to go back and look up stats for all of your vehicles and all of your different types of units. So if you look at the chits here, what I'm doing is I took out my old copy of Panzerblitz, and I'm kind of putting the same units up against each other so you can see for comparison. You can see how much bigger the Conflict of Heroes tokens are as opposed to the Panzerblitz. I mean, back in the old war games, that was what our symbol was for infantry. You had the little square with a little cross in it there, and that was your infantry. And that tells me some of the information, but it's really not that intuitive. And I think really when we get back to wargaming, that was one of the problems. I mean, they were just so small to pick up, so small to use, and they just didn't look that great. I mean, if you really see the comparison on how good the quality is here, and again, when you're stacking them, it just becomes so apparent that the Conflict of Heroes unit tokens not only give you more information, they actually are bigger and easier to use. So what I want to look at here now is on the map. I want to show you, when you've got your units on the map, how you can see it really helps that the map, it's got the nice grid on it with the nice dots in it, and each unit's got its own facing. So when you're playing, you can see each other, and you can see who's being flanked and who's not being flanked, and it really, on the table, it makes for a very easy layout for you to take a look at. When you're in combat, And if you take any damage, the nice part about it is to say I've just got these 2 units here and 1 unit fires at the other one here and he takes and gets a hit. He gets a random damage token. And then you flip over that damage token and it tells you actually how the unit is affected. And I think this is also a unique thing because it really adds a little bit of variety as to how you damage the opposing unit. There, you know, for this one, it's a suppress. So with a suppress, it's going to cost more to move, and and it's going to take you more to attack. But you could be berserk. You could run into, you know, all kinds of interesting and unique type of scenarios where. To get out of them, you have to rally the troops, and it tells you, you know, for pin there, for example, you can't move. And you have to roll a 7 or higher to get, you know, unpinned. When you take a hit, you've got that 1 token on there, and then if you take another hit, you know, regardless of what it says, that kills the unit and the unit's done. So it makes combat pretty fast and pretty easy, which I think is neat about this game. It doesn't overly complicate that. The last part I want to look at here are the cards. The cards bring in another bit of tactics into the game that allow you to do things such as the scenario will tell you there are certain weapons that you can equip your different troops with, your different squads with, and those different weapons can add abilities. And again, all of that's written there right on the card. Most times the scenario will dictate that, which again adds a little bit more to that base game, a little bit more fun. The other thing that the cards add are really extra things that you can do, like move a unit again or take a bonus action with the same unit. So anytime, you know, you've used a unit, sometimes you'll have a card in your hand that lets you go ahead and use something, or it for instance, it lets you immobilize an enemy right there. So there's a part in everybody's turn or the sequence where you can actually play one of these cards and do something else in the game that allows you to do a unique action there. So let's go back up top and we'll hear about my final thoughts. So that's kind of a quick overview of what it kind of looks like and what the pieces look like. And really that's where I'm going to start with this. And to me, the aesthetics of this game are one of the big things that set it apart from other war games. I can't tell you how many times I've been playing war games, people have come by and looked at it and they just walk right on by just because of what it looks like. I mean, those old Panzer Blitz pieces, I mean, yeah, they're great, but they're so small, and they're not that great to look at, you know, and really Conflict of Heroes, that series of games, looks absolutely great. They've got the nice elevation, they've got the terrain, they've got the really nice counters, the really big unit counters there, which I think are absolutely great to use. I think that what it does is it takes a lot of the mechanics of a war game, which are, you know, how troops move, how their firepower versus the defensive firepower. If somebody gets hit, they rout, they run away. There's all of those concepts that are common in a number of war games, but it doesn't take them too far yet. And that's what's great. For example, the smoke. That's one I always come back to, where in Conflict of Heroes, you can drop some smoke and it's there, and at 1 round, 2 rounds, it's gone. It's an easy mechanic. In some of the other war games, you know, smoke falls because you blew up a building. Okay, we got to check the wind direction. We got to see how hard it's blowing. Okay, so now the smoke's going this way. What was going that way? It obstructs it. You know, tons of rules that dictate smoke, which again, we're going to talk about games and I love those type of things, but that's not for the intro wargamer. They don't need that. That just complicates things. You don't need to know, you know, that the starter on the German tank was bad, so they had to, you know, kick it twice, you know, and roll on this table. Don't go there yet. This is great. This keeps it simple. It keeps it a lot of fun to play, and it really brings some of that randomness that I really like, but not too crazy where, you know, dice rolling is 100% of it. You've got some skill. You can stack your troops. You know, you can form fire groups, and you can really do overwhelming odds to give you a great, you know, numbers when you go for your attack. But those cards are great because the cards, no matter how well laid plans you've got, your opponent throws down a card that gives them a double move, it kind of messes with your plans a bit. Or if somebody uses an opportunity action, right in the middle of a plan that you're setting up, it immediately throws that monkey wrench into your whole system, and you have to kind of go back now and rethink. And I really love that opportunity action. To me, it reminds me of, it's the individual unit commander on the ground making that split-second decision that it might go great and turn the tide of battle, or it might go horribly wrong, and now this unit can't do anything. It reminds me of a completely different war. I really love the movie Gettysburg, and when the troops, they come with that bayonet charge down the mountain. I promise you the general didn't come up with that. That wasn't his plan. That was a split-second decision that the commander on the ground makes, and it changes the tide of battle. And I really look at those opportunity actions in that way. It's where the guy on the ground sees something, doesn't have time to radio back, but says, you know what? I see an opportunity to make a difference in this conflict, and I'm going to take it. And they take it, and sometimes it works out and throws a complete monkey wrench in the plans of the opponent. I like that. I think that's great. I also like the units, the way that everything is on the actual tile and it's nice and visible. Even on the damage tiles, the wounds, it tells you all the information you need there. One of the things I don't like about some war games is you're constantly going back to the rule book to look up tables and look up things. Here, it's all there, right on the actual chit itself there. When you talk about the rule book, man, I love the way they do the rule book in this. Rule books, when I talk about War and Pieces, I'm going to come back to rule books a lot because, again, wargaming is about immersion, and immersion means, for the most part, a lot of detailed rules. But what they do in this game is they teach you 15 rules or 10 rules. And then you go play a scenario. You learn 3 or 4 more, you play a scenario. You learn 3 or 4 more, you go in, and it builds on itself so that if you're not quite ready to go, you've got 4 scenarios that you can go have a great time with someone, and you don't have to add in, hidden artillery, hidden movement, special units, structures until you want to. That's great. That way you're not reading 45 pages of rules, and then you're trying to remember 45 pages of rules when you try to take it to the table. The other thing I like about this game that sets it apart from some of the other, squad-based games is the armor and artillery. There's other games out there that I really enjoy, but the problem is they really focus only on infantry. And I love how this game brings in the armor, brings in the tanks, so it makes your units have to think a little bit more. You can't just, go out, because you never know if in reserves your opponent's got a fleet of panzers, or something like that. So that makes it great when you find got these weapon cards that you put on your units. So you never know when some tanks might show up, or when you're walking around and all of a sudden artillery starts firing at you that you didn't know was in the area. I think that adds a great element to the game, and it does add a bit of the realism. The only knocks that I've got really have to do with a bit of the fact that some of the other games are much broader in their scope as far as, again, focusing on World War II, on the different battles that went on during World War II. Here you've really only got 4, and you're really limited because you only have the 2 different armies that are in the game. For instance, in Awakening the Bear, it's the Soviets and the Germans. In Storm of Steel, it's also the Soviets and the Germans. I think that in Guadalcanal, that one is the Japanese and the United States. So, and there's another one that I can't remember off the top of my head. But all of those, you don't have the variety that you do in some of the other bigger spanning war games where you've got the opportunity to, say, simulate the first battle of World War II when the Germans come in and attack Poland. You don't have the opportunity to do something like that. So it's a bit limited there, but it's not a bad thing. It's just that going into it. The other thing that's a little bit sometimes tricky with this game is that line of sight, when you get with elevation, sometimes you kind of have to remember the rules. That's one time I constantly go back to the rule book a little bit. Depending upon where you're at, there's a cliff effect. So line of sight, what I would have loved if they would have kind of colored the tiles a bit differently to say, from this elevation, you can see all of the other ones that have a green dot or a blue dot or something like that. I don't know, something else to help a bit. For the main part, on level ground, line of sight in this is great. You just draw that line dot to dot. If there's no obstruction in between there, you're good to go. So I think it's easy on that because again, that's another thing that as you get into some of the bigger war games and you start to go into structures that are three-dimensionals, 2 and 3 story buildings, line of sight becomes again something that you and your opponent are constantly talking about. I don't think I've ever really had a massive argument about line of sight in any of the Conflict of Heroes games because they do try to simplify it. So I think, again, for the veteran wargamer, you definitely have a great squad-based game where you can really throw some real good tactics into it. It's got a lot of meat to it. And then for the new gamer, you can step into it, and it's a great-looking game. So if you're used to some really great, beautiful-looking games, you're not going to get something that looks like Panzer Blitz where you've got your infantry as a square with an X in the middle. That really hurts the immersion. This one, you got the units there, you see them in the firefight, you can really get into that. So I like it for that reason, and I think a lot of new gamers like it for that reason too. So guys, that's my first War and Pieces. I really want to know what you think about it. Let me know the format. I'll probably be doing a couple more of these. I might be taking some deeper dives into some of the bigger war games. Who knows? But let me know what you think down in the comments. I'll comment and I'll try to respond. And, let me know what you think. And guys, take it easy, and I hope to see you some more this weekend while Rob's off having a good time at MegaCon. Thanks a lot, guys.